What's up, people? Today I'm going to do a video on getting the most out of your groups in Pro Tools. Here we go. I have a blank session. I'm going to hit Shift Command N. I'm on a Mac. If you're on a PC, hit Shift Windows N to make a new track. I'm going to hit the number 2 to make 2 of them and hit Enter or Return. So I'm just going to set this up kind of like a faux recording environment. I like to record things in pairs, whether it's guitars or trumpets or vocals or just about anything. I like to record things in pairs because I can layer them if I want to, or I can comp between 2 tracks, which I find visually very effective. So let's just make this, we'll make believe here a little bit. I'm going to hold Shift Option or Shift Alt on a PC to put an EQ on both tracks. That key command, Shift Option or Shift Alt, is apply to selected. You can put a couple of compressors. I'm going to put a couple of sends. Just to, actually, before I do that, let's make a couple of returns. So I'm going to hit Shift Command N or Shift Windows N. I hit Command or Windows right arrow to make them stereo, Command or Windows down arrow to go to aux, and then hit, oh, I meant to do 2, so I'll just duplicate that. Shift Option D or Shift Alt D. While I'm in this window, this is a good thing to think about. Once you set this once, it'll remember. So usually what I want to copy are inserts and sends, definitely not groups, and typically not any of the rest of this, and then say OK. So now I've got 2 auxes, and while I'm at it, I should have done this in the same window, but whatever. I'm going to make a master fader. So I hit Command tilde, which is the little squiggly underneath the escape key to toggle floating windows, and I'm going to move this over here just for organizational sake. So now I have a little bit more of a faux session going on. Let's say that this one is verb, and then the next one I just hit Command or Windows right arrow is delay, not delay, delay. So, you know, just getting a little bit of a faux session set up here. I'll also, let's go back to these audio tracks. I'm going to hold Shift Option again or Shift Alt. And then now that those tracks are created, let's send to both of those tracks. And I'll actually usually see both of these so that I can have them next to each other in a good use of space. Then I can Command or Windows click on that little A to show it here. Okay, so this is just sort of the starting point. Let's say we've recorded some stuff on these tracks here. Actually, let's go ahead and group them. Command G or Windows G. Uncheck follow globals. Here's a funny thing, like you can get a lot of use out of this stuff, and we're going to get into it, but a lot of times if you just leave it on follow globals, even though this stuff is selected, when you first go to try to have that stuff linked, it just won't work. It's a bug. Then you have to go back in and modify groups and uncheck and recheck it. So I've gotten in the habit of just right off the bat undoing and redoing all this stuff. I'm just holding Option or Alt to get the whole group at once. And what I usually do is link everything but pan, because if you ever want the stuff to be linked, then link it here, because you can always toggle the group off, which I'm going to get into. And don't bother to name it. I'll show you why. So that's my group 1. Now let's say I'm done and I'm going to working with those, and I want to like start another guitar part or another vocal line or another trumpet part or whatever. Shift Option D or Shift Alt D. Notice it remembered. And this is important because I don't want group assignments to be checked, because if it were, then my new tracks are going to be in my old group, and that's going to be a mess. That's not what I want. I hit Enter or Return. Then I right off the bat always just change the color of the new guys, girls, whatever, pronouns to just for my organizational brain. And then I'll hit Command G again. So now these are a new group, and let's do that one more time. Shift Option D or Shift Alt D. Change the color again. Group them again. Command G or Windows G. So now I have a few groups going on, and they're all just group 1, 2, 3, and you might be thinking that sucks, but it really doesn't, because a couple of reasons. One, you can tell what a group is currently the selected tracks, because these are selected, and then there's the little black dot next to it. So let's see, if I go up here and I click on one of these, you'll see a hollow dot, and that's saying, well, part of this group is selected. If I shift click here, now you can see now it's a full dot. Now it's saying the whole group is selected. Or if you want to see what members are in a group, you can just click over here next to it, and it will select them and show you. So I don't name my small groups. I name only macro groups. So for example, well, before I go there, let me show you why I feel this way. So what the Avid books will say is, let's do Shift Option D again, or Shift Alt D. Change the color. Let's say that this group is my drum group. So I'll go Command or Windows G, call it drum. Now, it just so happened by coincidence this happened to be on group D, but they'll say like put your drum group on group D. So you could I could change it if I wanted, if it hadn't just by coincidence been group D. So say put your drum group on group D and say okay. So then I can move my focus, which like right now it's in keyboard focus because this little A to Z up here is on. You can move your focus by going, it's Option Command or Alt Windows 1, 2, or 3. So with those two modifiers, 1 was in keyboard focus, 2 is in clip focus, and 3 is in group focus. So let's say move it to group focus, then hit D to toggle your drum group on and off. Now, I find that to suck because I want to always just have my focus in keyboard focus, so I can use R and T to zoom in and out, or I can use X and C and V as single keystroke modifiers, and there's all kinds of modifiers that you can use in that environment. I don't want to go Option Command 3 and then think drum and hit D and toggle that on and off because, well, what if you also have a djembe group? There are 104 groups you can have available, so you're not going to be able to, that's not going to work to always have the first letter match the group ID. And what about when you're in the second bank and then you're on D of the second bank and it's just a big shit show. So I don't think that works well at all, and it's kind of pointless because you can just, I'm going to delete that drum group. Just right click or control click and delete, yes. And then let's Command G or Windows G again and just have that be group 4. I can just go Shift Command G and toggle all the groups on and off. So anytime you want a group's functionality to go away, just hit Shift Command G. It's just one thing you have to remember for every single group. And that's it. That's a beautiful thing. You don't have to think, oh, it's my third guitar group, which I called X for some reason because G was already used, and wait, I gotta go. It's just stupid. So Shift Command G is your friend. It toggles all groups on and off. So now, with these groups set up like they are, what should work, and let's see if if it does. This is where the bug comes in once in a while. Let's look at, so all these groups are on because they're selected. If I click on both of these EQs, so click on one and then just shift click on the other, their attributes should be linked because when we made the group, we made sure that the controls of the inserts were linked. So let's see. Aha, they are. So if they weren't, because sometimes that's the bug, if you did all this and it didn't work, you'd go, okay, crap. I'm going to close out of these and I'm going to go back in and modify my groups, Control Command G or Control Windows G or modify groups. Go back into group 1 and do this thing where you uncheck and recheck the controls, and that almost always fixes it. And now you would go back and say, let's see, are they linked? And now they are. This is a great thing right here. I use this all the time. Being able to link EQs especially allows me to not send these into an aux to treat them together. Now that's a fine workflow. People do it all the time. I do it sometimes, but I guess because I'm lazy and I don't like dealing with the whole volume scheme that you end up having when you have a lot of auxes, and I need to pull this and not the source, but not the return, or the return and not the source. Not that that's not a solvable thing, it is, but it makes things easier for me to just not have things flowing into auxes all over the place and just EQ them together with plugins that are linked like this. I just like that workflow. Furthermore, because our sends and everything were linked, we now have this, that, okay, I can push, it's affecting the whole group. Now, if you ever want to clutch out a group member or not affect the whole group, you can either just Shift Command G or Shift Windows G, toggle all the groups off, so now it's independent, or you could leave the groups on and just hold Control, which is clutching out a group member, so it's only, it's not, the whole group isn't acting active. Or I can just right click and drag, and that's the same as Control click, and you're clutching out a group member. So the exception to my don't name your groups thing is when you have like a macro group, a group that has groups within it, because otherwise it can get kind of confusing. So here's a thing I do a lot where, let's say my whole session is done. I'm not going to create any more new tracks. I like to have a volume group that consists of everything that is contributing to the master output, because I like to leave my master fader at unity or at 0. People have opinions about that. You don't have to do this. It's just a strong workflow to do it. You really have a good sense of your whole gain structure when the master fader is at unity. So I'm going to select, I clicked on one, shift click to the other, select all these, and I'm going to Command G or Windows G, call this vol master for volume master. I'm just going to say okay. Now this group I would have off, because by having this group on, it's, now all these are affected, so all my other groups have become like kind of useless. Now, there is a thing where, and I'm going to use a VCA for this, and a VCA brings some of that functionality back. VCA stands for voltage control amplifier, which comes from analog consoles, and it's just a handle for a group. So if I go Shift Command N or Shift Windows N, and I'm just hitting Command or Windows down arrow to VCA, I'm going to tab over and call this vol mast. Now, right now we have this volume master group that's a macro group. It has groups within it. And you can actually see that too, because if I click on all these, you can see how this has the black dot, which is saying I'm the group that's fully in focus. And then all these other ones have now a dot with a circle around it saying, well, the black dot is saying that group is fully selected, but then the circle around it is saying, well, we're also in this bigger macro group. But at any rate, so I made the VCA, but I didn't assign the group to it yet. And so right now I have this volume master group, and it's like everyone is being affected, and you can see my volume itself is together, and then the sends and everything are together too, which I don't want that, right? Because now all my other groups are made worthless. Now when I go and assign this macro group volume master to this VCA, it now knows, Pro Tools knows that these are all being now controlled by this master handle. And so if I go over here and just pull these now they're not linked over here, which is kind of cool. But what isn't so cool is if I go up here, these are all still linked. I don't know why they don't make it so once you assign the VCA, those unlink too. That would be cooler. Now you might be thinking, if you're deep into this, I could have just not linked those in the group. And that's true. But what I would say is any macro group, just don't have it on over here, because even when it's not on over here, it's still being controlled by this handle. So I still have this, handle, this master, this VCA master for everything. But then these are not linked other than to their own groups. So this is a great setup. And again, with not naming your groups, I can always tell if I want to see who's in a group. If you say you got 102 or 104 of these groups, and you I don't know what the heck is in this, just click right here, right next to it, and it will select those 2 tracks. And again, we didn't need to name them because we can always just toggle them on and off with Shift Command G. Or if you don't even want to toggle them, sometimes you'll need to toggle them off depending on what you're doing, but you can also clutch out group members, which is just, so if I left click and drag, I'm getting them both. Obviously, if I control click, control is clutching out a group member. So now I can move these things independent, even though the group is still on. So that's control click to clutch out a group member, or you could just right click and clutch out a group member as well. I hope you found this helpful. Try out some of these tips. Let me know what you thought. Thanks for checking out this video.